I am Miss Oklahoma Earth, Sunny Day. I am a woman who continues to break barriers of uncontrollable circumstances. Being brought up in an environment of poverty and childhood trauma, I was inspired at a young age to begin breaking cycles, and starting in 2017, I became my family's first high school and college graduate with a bachelor's degree in communications from the University of Oklahoma. Following graduation, I was a witness to the life-changing experience of the Oklahoma teacher walkouts. From that moment, I knew that it was my calling to become an educator. I have been teaching since 2017 at one of Oklahoma's most underprivileged school districts. I currently teach 5th grade English language arts and social studies. Previously, I have taught 6th grade English and served as our school site ESL teacher. In 2020, I was honored with the title of Teacher of the Year. One of the most incredible and unique opportunities that I have been given as an educator is the ability to use my voice and experience to begin an initiative of bringing environmental conservation and activism into the classroom. My advocacy, Sustainably Sunny, uses a 3-pillared system of education, empowerment, and engagement. I use meaningful literature, weekly playground cleanups, a classroom recycling club, and classroom lesson plans that promote leadership to grow tomorrow's world leaders and impacts our daily environment. Outside of being an educator, I am living out one of my favorite roles of being a big sister to my 2 beautiful sisters and 2 incredible brothers, and being the daughter to my mother who embodies strength and my father who displays resilience. It is because of my family that I am who I am today. I am a dreamer, and I am chasing the opportunity of becoming the next Miss Earth USA, because this title simultaneously aligns with every single thing that I implement in my daily life. Education, mentorship, service, and awareness. Awareness to the beauty and the safety of our Mother Earth. I am an influential educator who fights for a more sustainable home in my school and state, and helps equip the future generations with the necessary skills to thrive and impact. I cannot wait to expand that influence as the next Miss Earth USA. I am here and ready to make this country that I call home my very own classroom.
Good evening, everyone. My
Hello.
special guest for today is, as you saw, Sunny Day. Sunny, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing, I'm doing very well. I was just telling Sunny, I think she has the best name ever. Is there any story behind why your parents decided to name you Sunny Day?
Yes, actually, so my parents had me at a pretty young age. They got pregnant with me at 17 and their life turned upside down. They both had to drop out of high school in order to have me. And so they said it was a very dark time in their lives and they wanted to add a little bit of light into their lives. And I really try to live up to my name in my daily life, try to shed light and be a positive light for everyone around me. So it is a lot to live up to, though. Like I was telling you earlier, I do have an alter ego and she's very sassy and her name is Stormy Night. So, but she's also my fierce side. I say that Stormy Night is the one that comes out on stage.
I was going to ask, so who's going to get more airtime at Miss Earth USA, Sunny Day or Stormy Night?
Definitely Stormy Night. Oh yeah.
Forward to that. Have your students ever seen Stormy Night?
Yes, and it's a look. I don't have to say anything. It is a look that they get and they're like, "Oh, Miss Day's having one of her days." They either think I haven't finished my coffee and I'm not ready, or they've done something they're not supposed to do.
What happens if a student tries to be sassy to Miss Sunny Day before she's had her morning coffee?
I do it right back. And they love it. They love when I match their energy. Some teachers get really offended with their sass, but I grew up helping raise my brothers and sisters, so I am used to it. And I know that sometimes you have to get on their level and speak their language for them to really resonate with you and be like, okay, Miss Day's not playing around. Okay, we're gonna put ourselves back in check.
Yeah, I completely agree. As someone who's worked with kids myself, I mean, sometimes you got to just get down and dirty. Like you get all the university or the college education and all these intellectuals who've never actually taught a child or
Yep.
been in an overpopulated classroom or dealt with ADHD kids who are hopped up on red sugar. And I just that's when I struggled with formal study because
Mm-hmm.
I did do my education. I began my education degree in college, and I had great difficulty with it because there were these intellectuals who had these great ideas on one hand, like how to divvy up your classroom and set up your
Yep.
classroom environment. And on the other hand, they had no actual real world experience,
Exactly.
um, and I think it really, really showed. But just to take us back to the intro video that you did, now I think it's an interesting one. I love it.
Thank you.
The soundtrack is, let's say, a little bit more somber than some of the other
Mm-hmm.
ones I've seen. And just from some of the language you used, I get the feeling that your life certainly hasn't been all glitters and rainbows. And I like to say that the people who have the most depth have been through the most pain. So, can you tell us a little bit more about what your thinking was behind the intro video? And is it accurate to say that you've lived life?
Absolutely. So, I have been competing in pageants for 10 years, and I feel like for a vast majority of that experience, I have kind of put on a front and felt like I needed to fit into this mold of being picture perfect. And I've even had coaches or people in the pageant industry tell me to not tell my story because it's heavy, because it's dark, and a lot of people are going to be intimidated or even scared or threatened by it. But the truth is, as the next Miss Earth USA, I want to be a very real and authentic person because I never had someone to look up to when I was a little girl going through similar struggles. And I didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel like I was
Mhm.
worthy. Little Sunny would have never imagined that she is packed right now to go to Orlando to compete at Miss Earth USA. And I grew up, my life for the first 9 years was picture perfect. My family was beautiful. We had a house that my parents built together. But when I was 9 years old, my father developed an addiction to methamphetamines, and he decided to chase that addiction. And so I missed out on 15 years with my father, and he ended up being homeless. We were still in contact. He was still my best friend, but he was very absent as a father in my life. And whenever he left, we lost our house. My mom lost everything. She had to go work to start working 3 to 4 jobs. We moved to Section 8 housing. My favorite day of the month turned into being food stamp day. And I literally, as a child, was in fear every day that I was going to lose my father, either because he was living on the streets or that he was going to overdose. And addiction is something that has ran in my family. Just last year, I lost both of my grandparents as a result of an overdose. And so I take a lot of pride in the fact that I believe I was one to break the cycle and to set the example for my younger siblings. But I really wanted to tell my truth in that video because I love that the Miss Earth USA organization provides us an opportunity to share our story and to tell about our
Mhm.
home. And I do have a very positive name, and I like to be radiant and to be sunshine. But the truth is my life was very dark, and it was very hard and very heavy. And I knew that my students wanted to see that video, and my students know my story. And if I were to put on a front and pretend to be something other than who I am, the people closest to me would have known that that wasn't true. And if I win Miss Earth USA, I want to win telling my truth. I want to talk about my mental health. I want to talk about my childhood because that's the kind of story that kids need to listen to. And at the end of the day, that's why I'm running for this title, is because I want to be a beacon of hope for other kids who maybe thought that where they grew up and the clothes that they wore, they also lived in Section 8 housing. They had a parent who was homeless. They grew up with fears of losing their loved ones to drugs and alcohol. That they too have a place on this stage or just a purpose in this life, and they can be the authors of their own narrative.
I feel like we could just end the interview there in terms of
Oh.
impact. I mean, that's a I had no idea the story ran that deep.
Mhm.
I don't think it's accurate to say I feel sorry for you. I certainly have empathy for you,
Yeah.
but something beautiful obviously has come from it. Let me just ask you, as someone who's actually been in front of students before, and I was suicidal twice in my
Mhm.
life, and I've always taken the view that at a certain age, anyway, okay, maybe not at 5 years old, but certainly teenagers tending towards the later teens, 15, 16, 17, 18. I think for me, it's very important as an educator to connect with those students on a very human level. I dislike trying to portray myself as perfect, whether it's as a teacher, a coach, or indeed on the pageant stage, as you mentioned, because I think no one can relate to perfect. And I honestly think it does more harm than good, because then
I
you,
agree.
even if you portrayed yourself as perfect on social media, you now have this impossible facade to live up to, and you know you're not perfect. So in many ways, it feels like a bit of a lie. So when you said that your students are aware of your story, firstly, I think that takes a lot of courage, because that's scary to, as a teacher, because you're the role model, to sort of go, "Hey, kids, I'm not perfect."
Mhm.
But can I ask, how did they react to it when they became aware of your story?
They felt very protective, and I think, very protective of my mental health, but also very grateful that I was open with him because the school that I work at, as you could hear in my video, uh, the most at-risk schools in the state of Oklahoma. So I work with children who experienced similar or have similar backgrounds that I do. A lot of our kids are actually homeless or in foster care. Some of our kids have lost parents to drug addiction as well, and a lot of our kids' parents are incarcerated. And I think by me being vulnerable and sharing that story, these kids can go, if she can do it, I can do it too. And that's exactly what I want to do. Realistically, I work with fifth and sixth graders, but my students are on an average a second grade reading level. So the truth is, they're not going to be the most literate children out there. But if I can have those students leave my classroom believing in themselves and knowing that where they come from does not determine their destiny, and also create this safe environment for kids to feel comfortable opening up about their
Mm.
hardships as well with me and other students, these students can now see themselves in each other. And when I first started at this district, it was kind of scary because some of our kids are involved in gangs at a very young age, and there was a lot of fighting. And I said, I need to create a safer environment in this classroom. I want these kids to not only look after me and after themselves, but I want them to look after each other because these kids don't realize that they are so much more alike than they actually think they are. And so by me sharing that story, it creates an opportunity for the kids to feel safe to talk about their hardships as well. There are kids in my classroom that the entire class knows that their parents are incarcerated or that they too have lost a parent or a loved one to drug addiction. And it's really cool to get to see them relate and bond and take care of each other. And I've seen the fighting go down because of that environment that I've created. So if I can just impact these kids and make them leave my classroom knowing that they are loved and they are worthy, then I truly believe that I've done my job.
That's a bit lost for words there, because I think it's an amazing impact you're having. But can I ask you, do you ever feel like it's a bit of a hopeless cause? Because I watched your video, and I didn't know about the Oklahoma teacher walkout, and then I looked
Mm,
it up, and Oklahoma teachers at the time, and still to this day, I don't know exactly what the statistics are, but they were some of the most, if not the most underpaid teachers in the United States. I think the figure was somewhere in the 40,000s, where the average was 55,000, which
mhm,
is a big gap. And I can't imagine it's gotten any better with today's cost of living. I don't exactly know what it's like for you guys, but food inflation, gas inflation, and it's
mhm.
just to own a house is an impossible dream for most people. So, and then I watched another, I think it's on your Instagram, and you gave an answer to, I think it was when you were a different pageant, what grade would you give America's education system? And you gave it a D. And that's not easy to do on stage, because a lot of people go, "Oh, she should have said A, because America's the best." But I thought it was very interesting that you gave it a D, and the reasons why you detailed giving it a D. So, do you ever just feel like, I got to imagine some days you just like, I'm banging my head against a brick wall. I'd be better off just being a law clerk or an accountant. I mean, full respect to those, but ones that are less emotionally taxing, because having worked with children myself, some days you come back and you hear stories, and I haven't heard stories like you have, I'm sure, but you hear stories and you're just like, oh my God, like you're having to go through that. I can't believe you're even in school. Sometimes I can't even
Hmm.
believe you're alive having gone through what you've been through. But do you ever just feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall?
I do. I feel hopeless often. Honestly, there are many days, probably 3 out of the 5 days that I'm at work, that I end up in my car right after I leave my classroom in tears,
Yep.
because of a heartbreaking story that a student has told me, or a certain student who really needs to be in school hasn't shown up in a week. But the truth is, despite the hardships of being an educator in Oklahoma, we are 49th in quality of education. We are 48th in teacher pay. Um, I truly did know what I was signing up for. And I don't know if you know this, but I did not go to college to be an educator. That is not my degree. I went to school for communications and business. And when I graduated in 2017, it was the teacher walkout. And I was at
Mhm.
the Capitol every day protesting for my former teachers with my younger brothers and siblings. And I had a former teacher look at me and said, "This right here, this is your calling." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, but what do you mean I didn't go to school for this?" And it was kind of weird, but because they lost so many teachers in Oklahoma, they handed out emergency teaching certifications. And so I applied for it, I got accepted, but I did go ahead and take all of my teaching certification exams and I passed them. And I did not have a clue what I signed up for when I entered that classroom. But I knew that since the age of 9 years old, I have been helping my mom raise my brothers and sisters, and I know what kids need.
Mm.
It may not be to teach them how to be the smartest kid in the room or a mathematician, but kids need a mentor. They need
Mm.
someone who believes in them. They need someone who loves them. And I can do that absolutely for them. And in 2020, I was actually honored with the title of Teacher of the Year, which was baffling to me because this is not the profession that I expected myself to go into. And I don't have those 4 years of college experience with this. But I think that truly proves that teaching is about what's in here.
Yeah.
Not There's nothing that a textbook can give you that's going to prepare you for what you experience in the classroom. You have to be
Yep.
thrown into it because it's going to change every year depending on the kids that walk in that
Yep.
classroom and their stories. So it is a struggle, but it is a struggle that is so worth it to me.
Well, look, as long as it's worth it,
Yeah.
that's the main thing. I think the world needs more people such as yourself. But you just glossed over the 2020 Teacher of the Year.
Hmm.
Tell me more about that. Teachers are underappreciated. I think some of the most underappreciated in society. It blows my mind that a first world country, leader of the free world, such as the United States, needs to hand out emergency teacher
Yeah.
certifications. I mean, like, surely don't you guys, doesn't the government have plans in place to give kids the best education? I mean, like, we talk about children are the future, and that's all well and good, but put your money where your mouth is. If
Yep.
surely if
I
the
agree.
kids are important and quality education is important, and I'm not talking about, I mean, you need basic literacy, obviously, but more than
Hmm.
that, you need role models. You need teachers who are there because they love it, not because that's the only thing they could do. And that's a big problem here in Australia. I don't know about the United States, but the entrance marks to get into teaching in the first place are some of the lowest out of any of the qualifications you could go into in terms of tertiary qualifications. um, and it just really does my head in that politicians will say, "Oh, children are our future. Education's important." And they don't lift a finger, at least from my
Hmm.
perspective, to do anything about it. But talk to me before I go off on a rant, because I'm very passionate about education and how I think it's screwed up in many countries anyway. The 2020 Teacher of the Year, congratulations. I mean,
Thank you.
how did that happen? How does that feel?
Well, first off, I was very surprised that I won because 2020 was a very unconventional year for me as an educator. Obviously, we had COVID, we were teaching virtually, but we were teaching virtually to students who did not have access to internet.
Mm.
So when I would log on to Zoom, my kids would be in the parking lot at McDonald's using their Wi-Fi at 7 o'clock in the
Yes.
morning. And because we lost so many teachers in 2020 because they were afraid of COVID, we had one specific job that was not fulfilled, and that is our ESL school site teacher.
Mhm.
And um, my principal, knowing that I will absolutely do anything for these kids, said, "Miss Day, I need you to step away from sixth grade English, and I need you to take this ESL position." And
Uh,
I
just
remember,
just so just to clarify, ESL is English as a second language?
yes,
Right.
and that is such an important job at my school because 70% of our students, their first language is Spanish.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I, Spanish, I cried and I cried and I said, I'll do it, but I don't think I'm fit for this position. And I want these kids to get an education. They are so deserving. And so what I did is I spent like a week and a half trying to make this Zoom function and to teach these kids Spanish, and it wasn't working. And so I went up to my principal and I said, I need your permission to go into these homes. This is not fair. This is a lack of equity. Not only do these kids not have internet access, but how am I supposed to even get them on Zoom by sending them directions in a language that they don't understand? So what I
Yeah.
did is I got that permission and I applied for a grant for these translating devices. They look much like AirPods. I would put one in, a student would put one in. If I would speak English, it would translate immediately to Spanish or
Wow.
English to
Right.
Spanish.
Yep.
And
Yep.
instead of being in my classroom on Zoom, I started knocking on doors and going into those students' houses. And the most beautiful part about that is I wasn't just getting to interact with these kids face to face and to help them learn English and also adapt to the culture in this country, but because their parents and their siblings were home, I was also helping educate their families. And it was a really beautiful and personal opportunity that I got. And I think that my staff probably voted for me for Teacher of the Year because I did go above and beyond. And I did get thrown into a position that I wasn't necessarily equipped for, but I made it work. I made deals with my students that for every certain amount of words you guys will learn in English, I would love to take a few minutes for you to teach me your native language as well. And so I got to learn from their families also. And the greatest thing about my ESL position is a lot of students that speak Spanish or come from other countries are told to leave it at the door. That you need to speak English first, you need to learn the American way. But I tell my students that where they come from is unforgettable and they need to tie that into where they, to America, and they need to remember their first language because it's going to make them more successful and able to communicate with so many different people. So I just think the way I went about that teaching position during a very hard COVID teaching year um, laid that award into my hands, but it was a huge honor.
Imagine. I mean, that's amazing that you actually, because at that time during the peak of COVID, it was before we even had vaccinations.
Yep.
So you literally, in many ways, were putting literally your life on the
Yeah.
line to give these kids a fair chance. In Here's a question I have to ask, and I don't know if there's a simple answer. I mean, given the stories that you've told me, for example, if I didn't know you were in the United States and you told me that story about education and you asked me, Adrian, what country do you think this is coming from? I wouldn't guess the United States of America.
Mm.
Um, what what needs to happen in order for stories such as that to not be happening anymore, where kids can actually get a quality education? Kids don't, have to go into the parking lot at McDonald's to use the free Wi-Fi. I mean, look, yes, you have to do what you got to do, but still, it seems to me, I don't know if you agree with this, but if you're going to be a leader of the free world, the democratic world anyway, you need to be providing quality education for as many people as you can. And what you just laid out doesn't sound like an ideal situation from any sane person's viewpoint anyway. So what has to happen in order for something like that not to happen again?
So I have the perfect solution, and it is actually my plan in the next 5 years. More educators need to be running for public office. More
Mm,
educators need to be running for the Board of Education or Secretary of Education because the truth is, my superintendent, who was just recently relieved of his job, had never set foot in a classroom. He had never taught, he had never been a substitute. And how are these businessmen supposed to make decisions for children if they don't know what educators need and they don't know what the
wow.
kids need? So
Yeah.
one of my long-term goals is to run for state superintendent and hopefully national secretary of education, because I think that they need teachers. They need teachers to be making those decisions because we truly are the only ones that need to know, or former students who have graduated to run for their board of education at their local school district. So we need more educators involved in public office because that is where the decisions are made, is up here.
Right. And I have no idea exactly what the path for that would be. So would you need to raise funds for that? Do you need to campaign for that? What would be the stepping stones to get into that position?
I would definitely have to campaign for it. And for the past few years, I've actually been communicating and connecting with my local city mayor and also speaking with the state governor on how exactly I can do that. And a lot of it is just personal connections. And the great thing
Mm,
about pageants is it's taught me so much about how to make connections with those in my communities or in high positions. It's taught me how to, do interviews and speak like this and how to connect with people. But I think that I'm perfectly capable, and this is one of my long-term goals. This is something I've wanted to do since I've set foot in the classroom is go up there because I know that's where
yep.
decisions are made, and I want to help teachers and I want to help students and their families. So it really is all about who you know and connecting and
Yeah.
being able to speak and engage with your community.
Well, it's definitely one of the best parts of pageants is the network that
Yep,
you make. And that's
absolutely.
really up to you guys. You need to be active networkers. It is what you make of it. If I were to ask, so if you do get to that position, or if you were to get to that position, what are some of the changes you would like to implement first? Given obviously that politics being politics, sometimes you can institute a change and it never goes through. But forgetting that for a second, what are some of the fundamental changes you'd like to implement, education wise, in the United States?
Well, the first thing is I would give teachers a pay raise. They deserve it, they need it, but there are two other things I really want to do. And one of them I actually have right next to me. So, this is a little snippet of what I give teachers. It's a curriculum that I have developed. It's a life skills and environmental sustainability intelligence
Hmm.
curriculum. It's what I hope to do as Miss Earth USA is to share this with educators for free, but we've got to change the standards and what we teach these kids. As you saw in probably one of my onstage questions, is I don't know who decided that science, math, English, and social studies were the only things that kids needed to learn. Because growing up as a little girl who had two parents who did not complete high school, I didn't know how to manage my finances. I didn't know how to apply for college, didn't even know how to do a job application. And these are skills that matter because the truth is, we have a high demographic at my school district alone of kids who drop out. And while that's devastating, it's a reality because some kids, one, just can't go that long because of uncontrollable circumstances. And two, maybe they don't want to, or their route is not to go to college. But we at least need to provide these kids with the skills to be successful with or without a degree or whatever their long-term goals are. And so it's a life skills curriculum that I believe that needs to be implemented in all schools, especially kids who are considered at risk. And then I think we need to change the standardized testing system. It is unfair. It is
Hmm.
unequal. It is ridiculous. And like I said, working with kids who are fifth graders, but on a second grade reading level, you're setting these kids up for failure and heartbreak. You know that they're not where they're supposed to be, especially because of COVID. And we're still making them take a fifth or sixth grade level test, knowing that they're not on that level. And so I think they need to adjust and do a portfolio of the kids' progress from the beginning of the school year to the end and just watch their growth because it's not about perfection with kids, it's about growth.
Hmm.
If I have
Yep,
one kid who goes from writing one word to being able to write a paragraph by the end of the year,
it's huge.
success.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So we've got to change the curriculum and what we choose is important to teach kids.
I think the old adage is progress over perfection. A few things. Number one, if I could get a copy of that, or you can send me a link to your
Yes,
Sustainably Sunny,
of
please
course.
do. I'd love to read it. Number two, standardized tests. We have them in Australia. I see the point behind them, but I think they are very poorly implemented. And what
Yep.
usually happens is that the school is awarded for results in the standardized tests. So the teachers are now no longer actually able to teach. They have to get the kids
Mhm.
to pass the standardized tests,
Yep.
and it penalizes the worst performing schools because and the ones that need the most help because they don't do as well in the standardized tests, and their funding is tied to performance in standardized tests. So you widen the gap, and I'm like, who thought this was a good idea? Clearly,
It
some
makes
politicians,
no
some were. It's never, you know what I mean? Just like, you look at it, even at a cursory glance, you're like, okay, I get where you're coming from. Literacy is important, but this is not going to achieve it. It's like this,
Mm-mm.
yeah, yes, what you're aiming for is important, but this is the worst way of achieving it because, I mean, you mentioned how important it is to have someone who believes in you. And there was a study done into Olympic level athletes, and they worked out that the biggest common denominator was not natural talent, it was having a coach who
Mhm.
believed in them. Now, that's true for an Olympic level athlete. It's going to be true for some young kid whose parents are in jail, for God's
Yep.
sakes, and has to make a decision: do I eat tonight, Or do I
Mhm.
go to school because I work my whatever job on the side to get some money so I can afford to pay maybe for my younger siblings? So standardized testing, I get it. I think it's terribly implemented in Australia. I don't know in America, but it sounds like it's
Yeah,
pretty much as bad as it is. Okay,
it is
that's my
awful.
answer. That's my answer. The other thing I want to bring you up on is the Oklahoma teacher walkouts. Now, one of your politicians labeled the educators at the time who were asking for a pay rise. She likened them, I believe it was a she, likened them to teenagers asking for a car. And it became this thing where I think the protesters then started jangling their keys at, I don't know if it was a senator who was, can you just, because some people go, oh, yeah, you just want more money, you just want more money, whatever. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I view teachers as some of the most most overworked, underappreciated people in the
Yeah.
Western world anyway. And to have someone say, and when you're the lowest paid teachers in the United States, to have them liken you to a bunch of bratty teenagers wanting keys to a car, I don't even know where to begin with that. How does that make people such as yourself feel as an educator yourself? And how does someone like that get it so wrong?
It is very offensive because no teacher wants more money. The truth is, we need more money in order to be successful. I know teachers who have not taken care of their own mental health because they can't afford to go to therapy.
Mm,
But I believe we are one of the main professions that need therapy because not only do we need an outlet for our own trauma, but we are absorbing and carrying the weight of our students'
yeah.
trauma as well. We need to be able to survive in order to take care of us because if we're not taken care of mentally, physically, and emotionally, we can't show up in that classroom and give
Yeah.
100%. I myself, I'm diagnosed with OCD, anxiety, and bipolar disorder. And if I don't take care of my mental health, I can't take care of and serve those children and provide assistance and support for their own trauma that they're experiencing. But it's offensive. But that takes me back to what I said earlier. That woman has clearly never set foot in a classroom.
Mm,
She has never had to buy students Christmas presents that they know are never going to get one because their parents can't afford it. They've never had to buy school supplies for 100 plus students because they know their parents can't afford it. They've never
yeah.
had to fully fund every single book or thing on the wall that's in their classroom. People do not understand what we have to do. These things are not provided to teachers. And at my school, I actually don't even have textbooks or curriculum, which is why I started developing my own. And a lot of the time, I have to, it like at the beginning of the years when I didn't have experience in the classroom, I was buying other educators' work online. That was coming out of my pocket because it wasn't coming from my district. So it just shows that those people truly have no idea what educators do. But it's really
Mhm.
sad because that shows me that they're not accepting the fact that they are where they are because of some educator somewhere believed in them and instilled in them the skills to be able to do their job. It is such an important job because without educators, there are so many things and so many professions that wouldn't even exist. There are so many powerful people who wouldn't exist or be in the positions that they're in because a teacher didn't give them the skills that they needed to be successful. So we are underappreciated. And I think if a lot of people would just sit down and even take the time to journal about an educator that changed their life, maybe they would
Mhm.
appreciate us a little bit more.
Well, that's very true. I certainly remember some of the formative teachers in my life. I remember my sixth grade teacher, for example. I remember the bad ones as well, I have to say, but I remember the good ones. It's interesting. The good ones the ones that I like to remember are the ones that actually had a pretty strong hand. You know, they ran the
Mhm.
classroom well. They were disciplined. It wasn't the teachers who let the kids run amok. But Sonny, give us an insight into what a typical day for you looks like. So we've already covered that many days, many times during the week, you feel like, well, you go to your car and you cry. That's not a good thing, by the way, obviously. Can you give us an insight for those of us who don't know? And I'm familiar with the education system to a degree, but certainly not in the United States and certainly not in Oklahoma. Um, what what does a typical day for you look like?
It is a busy and a long one, and it starts early. So my school starts at 7 a.m., and I actually live 45 minutes from my school. So I have to wake up every day at 4:30. I get ready, I grab my coffee, and I head to work. I do like to make it to work an hour early. Something Some people may call it silly or cheesy, but I pray over my students' desk every morning. So I like to get to work
Mm.
in time to be able to pray and kind of set the vibes and turn on my incense and turn on the lights to get the kids calm when they get there. Once kids arrive, all of our kids are on the free lunch program. So all of our kids are provided a free breakfast. So once kids come to my homeroom for breakfast, we go to this class called Success for All. So every teacher in the building teaches their subject and has a homeroom, but every teacher also teaches reading. So as I told you, our kids are on a
Mm.
low level. So we break our kids up by their reading level. So I teach a level 2, 3, which means I teach kids that are on a second and third grade reading level. And that's a
Right.
90-minute class. And so it's really
Mhm.
nice because they're not with kids that are on a sixth grade level and they can really do things where they're at. So
Yep.
we meet our kids where we are. After that, I have my homeroom for 2 hours straight. I do an hour of English and then I do an hour of social studies. We go out and we play recess, and then I take the kids to lunch. I'm a huge fan of having lunch with my students. I hardly bring my lunch, and so I eat the school lunch with the kids to encourage them to not be embarrassed by not having their homemade
Mhm.
lunches. And I hang out with the kids at the tables, and I'll alternate what class that I sit with. And then after that, I switch classes and I take my partner. His name is Mr. Cheek. I take his homeroom and do English and social studies. And then I take the kids to PE or music, and then we're done. So we're done at 2:30. And I typically spend a little bit of time preparing for the next day, getting my board all clean and cleaning my kids' desk, vacuuming. Then I come home and I take out my 80-pound boxer on a walk, and I usually do some sort of workout, but I'm also a pageant coach on the side. So I typically work with younger girls. And so I help them on their speaking skills at night. And then, like, for instance, the stack of papers I have to grade. So I come home and grade papers. So even though I leave the classroom, I still come home and I'm working till about 10 or 11 at night. So I'm running off of about 5 hours of sleep every day, but that caffeine gets me going and ready for those kids in the morning. But it starts really early.
Where's the best coffee in Oklahoma, Sonny?
I am a huge fan of scooters. There's also a place called Black Rifle. It is owned by a bunch of veterans here in Oklahoma, and they have
Nice.
some delicious coffee. I think it's the strongest caffeine I've ever had, but it gets me wired. It's crazy.
That's what we need. And
Yeah.
on a lighter note, tell the audience about the basketball game that you just lost.
It's so sad. So today we had our teacher-student basketball game. It's something that we do every year, and the teachers always win. And there was one thing that was different about this year's basketball game. I played. My students said that I did really good, and I was one heck of a defense, but we lost. So I'm starting to think that I might be the
Mhm.
common denominator, and maybe the reason that we lost. So, oops. Sorry. It made the kids happy though, right before going to break. So we'll say that I let them win for an early Christmas present.
That is one thing I would never let my students do, is beat me. I'm so
I
competitive, like, no,
know.
it's not, it ain't happening.
You're like, "Nope."
Ralph here, who will be, I'm assuming Ralph will be at Miss Earth USA, so thanks
Yes,
for
I'm
all
so
you do
excited to meet
as an
him.
educator, Sunny Day, and you have my utmost gratitude. Thanks for commenting that, Ralph,
Thank
'cause I
you.
certainly
That's so
agree
sweet.
with it. Now we have a small thing. I believe it's called the Miss Earth USA pageant coming up, um, and you do such amazing work. And obviously, you have big ambitions, but I would say properly seeded ambitions, because that's how you're going to create the change you want, is
Yeah.
by going into some sort of politics. How does pageantry fit in for you? Because obviously, you have an early morning start, 4:30.
Mm.
You have a late finish. You're running on, what I would say, running on fumes a lot of the time, right? It's emotionally tiring. It's emotionally exhausting. You have your own issues to deal with. You've got your dog to run around with. Your pageant coaching on the side. Why does Sunny Day decide that she doesn't have enough to do, that she's going to do a pageant for herself? Like, it must fit into your life somehow. Is it just a place you can go to actually enjoy yourself? Is it somewhere where you can go to fill out your own cup? Just tell me about that. How does it fit into the jigsaw puzzle that is your life?
So I consider the title of Miss Earth USA a promotion from Miss Day. I know that every woman who competes in a pageant wants to do it for a different reason, and their plans for when they become the title holder is different. And I think that's the beautiful thing about pageants is you're in control of your own reign and what you choose to do. But what I want to do is to continue to educate kids and to empower. And I love my students and I love what I do. But the truth is, I think that I'm selling myself a little short. I know and I have seen and I have felt and heard the impact that I can make. And I'm limited at my school of only impacting 30 kids an hour. And I want to be a teacher for every kid. I want to be every child in America's big sister and educator. And so, what I hope to do if I become the next Miss Earth USA is to go around schools and do a school tour and share my story and to give my You Are the Author of Your Own Narrative presentation. I also want to go and do professional development workshops with other educators in the country about how they can incorporate life skills and environmental conservation into their classroom as well. But it doesn't take a lot of preparation for me because, like I
Mhm.
said, when I think of Miss Earth USA, I think of what I already do, but on a more,
Yep.
a bigger level.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it's just about constantly improving myself. As someone who's diagnosed with mental health, I already have to take care of myself physically and mentally, just for my job and for my own sanity, really. And so, I already eat healthy. I already work out. I already do community service. I've done it since I was a kid because I myself am a product of service and I want to give back
Yeah.
now that I have the ability to do so. But it's not difficult or challenging for me because for me, it's from going from Miss Day to Miss Earth USA and doing the exact same that I already do and love, but on a much deeper level.
Yeah. I think that's very interesting because I often say to the people that I coach that the best way to succeed at pageants is to have a fulfilling life outside of it. Because then you don't need to manufacture something you're passionate about because every day you're living it, and
Mhm.
that just seeps through every pore. I mean, I would agree that I think you're selling yourself short. I think with your experience, your history, and then the way you speak, you not only speak very confidently, but there's a bit of a bit of fight there as well. I can see that if someone were to try and hose you down, you wouldn't be afraid to stand your ground. Um, tell me about that side of you because there's the glamorous pageant side, and we're all very gracious, elegant, and all that nice stuff, which is important. I'm
Mhm.
not dismissing it, but that sort of the in Australia, we call it the inner mongrel. That sounds terrible, but you know, not the dog in the fight, but the fight in the dog, so to speak. Tell me more about that stubbornness that I'm sensing or that fight, because I get the feeling that if someone was treated unjustly, Sunny Day would be the first person to start yelling at the person who was committing the
Yeah.
injustice.
Well, I honestly, since I was a little girl, I consider myself a warrior because I really did have to fight to survive and take care of myself and help raise a family with my mom.
Mm,
And since I was a little kid, I've always stood up for people who I believe weren't treated or looked at in the correct manner. When my dad was homeless and struggling with addiction, kids at school would make fun of me once they found out. And I said, "You don't understand what kind of man he is. This
mm,
is a man who is struggling with an illness, but this is a man that I've also given $20 to when he has nothing. And me and him go walk the streets, and he gives that $20 to another homeless man on the corner." And so, by using my story and opening up and telling people about my life experience, I feel like I'm opening other people's eyes and hearts to people that they normally wouldn't accept or love. And so, at my school, I'm constantly standing up for students and standing up for myself as well. And I think that's a really good thing to show because
mm.
I'm showing kids to be assertive and to stand up for themselves as well through their words, not necessarily their actions. So always been a fighter, but I try to go about it in a very graceful and eloquent way. I don't ever put myself in a position to talk about something or to stand up for something that I'm not educated or passionate
Yep.
about. I want to make sure that I definitely know what I'm talking about and have some story to back it up with.
To change the topic slightly, you're representing Oklahoma.
Mhm.
I don't know much about Oklahoma. You had a very famous gymnast way back, Shannon Miller, who came from Oklahoma, and obviously there's the musical
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. But that is all I know about Oklahoma, and I know the shape of the shape of the state.
Yep.
It's a very unique shape. But tell me more about this state that you're representing, because you actually live in the state, and obviously, I'm going to assume that because you've decided to educate in that state, that it does hold a very special place in your heart. So
Mm.
tell me more about the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah. This state is, I will say, it's a beautiful state. There's so much that it offers to people who live here, but it also is a state that does need a lot of fixing. And I think that's why I love getting to be Miss Oklahoma Earth and hopefully Miss Earth USA, is so I can shed light on the things that this state needs to fix, like education, like its politics, its healthcare system. But at the end of the day, this state has made me who I am. There are certain places that are very sentimental to me. This is the place where, I grew up with my mom, my best friend, and watched my dad struggle and helped raise my brothers and sisters. But the state has a lot to offer. So in my video, the beautiful scenery that you see is the Wichita Mountains. And that
Oh,
was a place that I went a lot with my mom and siblings when we were kids. We would drive down there every weekend and go hiking. So I've always had a wonderful relationship with nature. And when people think of Oklahoma, they think of like yeehaw horses and stuff like that. But it's actually blooming. So I work in Oklahoma City, and it's turning into a really beautiful and big city, and a lot of great opportunities for people. We have some really cool arts districts. There's the Paseo Art District that is a lot of female-owned businesses. It's a really wonderful place, and it's starting to bloom and open up. But on the political side, we need a little bit of help. So
we, we won't go into politics too much
it,
because
yeah.
I've gone into politics a little bit
Woo,
with several people, but in your country in particular, as soon as you state whichever side of the political aisle you're on, one of my other interviews said like half of America immediately hates you, and I don't.
exactly.
I don't think it should be like that.
No.
We have to be able to come together and have some sort of intelligent discourse
Mhm.
and debate. Um, anyway, yeah, let's leave that topic for now.
I agree.
But is there anything else that you wanted to say about education? Just because I feel it's a topic that I could talk so much with you about because I'm very passionate about it. And by the way, I mean, I passionately believe that there's a lot of things we could be doing a lot better for our kids, and that any country who's serious about wanting to do well, one of your priorities needs to be making sure your children are educated well. Obviously, health, that goes without saying. But is there anything else that you feel like maybe we haven't touched on in terms of education?
I wish that people just valued education more. I can say in confidence that I am the woman that I am today and as successful and grounded as I am because of my education. I am the first and only person in my family to not only high school, but to also get accepted to college. And I got accepted on a full ride academic scholarship and didn't have to pay a penny. And that is wonderful for a little girl who grew up in poverty, not thinking that college was even in her sight
Yeah.
because it wasn't reachable. But there are opportunities out there for every single person. If I can do it and become an educated woman, then literally you can too. And I think that one thing we could do better is provide more resources for kids who do grow up in poverty to be able to have that access to a higher
Mhm.
education, whether it's trade school or university. There needs to be more scholarship opportunities, but also classes starting, I think, even in middle school, teaching them how to apply for scholarships and how
Yeah.
to apply for universities, and almost doing personality tests to kind of match them with careers. Because the hardest part for me is neither of my parents did finish school. And so I didn't know anything about what I wanted to do or how to figure it out. And so I didn't have a lot of guidance. And it was because of my ninth grade English teacher, Mr. Flores, who I'm still friends with today, that I was able to discover a little bit about myself and the skill set that I had and what careers that could apply to. So I think if we could incorporate more of those classes in middle school and high school and help kids get starting thinking about that at a young age, then
Mhm.
we're setting them up for success, because kids really don't start thinking about college till their senior year in high school. And for some, that's too late. So they need to start working about their behavior, their academics, and their skill set before they get into high school, in my opinion.
It also helps give them a vision, doesn't it, for the future?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
what's something that potentially you're aiming at? Not to say that you have to do it. I mean, you went through college and ended up doing something different than you originally
Yeah.
intended, but you still had something to aim at. Whereas I feel like a lot of the problems in at least Western society are caused by not really knowing what we're aiming at. If without a vision, people perish, as the Bible says, and I think that
Yeah.
that's very true, especially for young people. They need to have something to aim towards. Otherwise, what's the point when they get into trouble? Um, but Sunny, let's. It's a fascinating topic and one I'd really like to see some real actual change happen. But let's just go towards a close. So before we get to the final 10 questions, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to?
My mom and my brothers and sisters and my dad. If it weren't for my family, I don't think I would be here today, and I can say that in confidence. They, at a certain point in my time, were the only support system and friends and family that I had, and my siblings are what kept me going. I wanted to survive and fight and keep going, and break all of these cycles because I wanted to prove to them that we could be something despite where we came from. And I'm grateful for both my mom and dad because they are the epitome of strength in very different ways. My mom, when we had absolutely nothing, made it feel like we were the richest kids in the world because she loved us, and she doesn't know that I know this, but I watched her sacrifice meals so me, my brother, and sister could eat. I watched her choose not to eat so we could eat. And I hope that one day when I'm a mother, I can be even half of the woman that she is. And my father, someone who also had absolutely nothing, to be such a happy and genuine and beautiful person. If it weren't for them, I don't think that I would be as passionate and as loving and as empathetic as I am. But getting to watch them really struggle and watch them fight through those struggles made me one heck of a fighter myself. So I am so grateful for my family.
Perfect. All right. Well, Sunny, let's shift tack a little bit. Let's
Okay.
get to these final 10 questions. So, number one, what is your favorite word?
Popcorn. I love popcorn, and I love the word. It makes me so excited, and it literally makes me smile, and it makes me think of the movie theaters because I used to steal popcorn from the movies and put it in my purse and take it home with me.
It. I have to ask you a couple. I need to say a couple of things here. So I was listening to this Blake Shelton song. He sing
Uh-huh.
Footloose, and at the beginning of that, it's got that "Let's all go to the lobby." Is that? Do you know where that jingle comes from? Because we never had it in Australia. Was that in the cinema?
I have no idea, honestly, but I love Blake Shelton, so anything he does works
Okay.
for me.
Okay, all right. And popcorn, I really hate popcorn because isn't it just
What?
corn and it's like 80% air?
It
And
is.
it's
It's a
just
big fluff ball, but it has butter on it and salt. Mwah,
yeah,
so
but
good.
you love the butter and salt then, not the
Fair.
popcorn is just a vehicle that it's delivered to your mouth. It's like someone
That's
else,
true.
one of my Texan friends said she loves escargot, snails. And I said, you don't love snails. What you love is the copious amounts of garlic butter that's on. You could eat a shoe with that much garlic butter on it. It tastes all right. All right, but popcorn, the word. I've never had that in over 300 interviews. So that's the first. Number two, what is your least favorite word?
Okay, are you ready for this? It's ratchet. I hear that word every day with amongst my students, and I'm so tired of them calling each other ratchet. I'm like, this is not like, as an English teacher, the word absolutely just hurts my brain. And then they just throw that at each other. It is not a nice word. I
That
can't
was not a
stand that word. It's so mean.
okay. That's another word. That's another answer I haven't had.
First for everything. You're welcome.
Ratchet. Okay. Question three. In life, what gets you excited? What turns you on?
The future and kind of the unknown, not knowing what's coming next, but knowing that I am doing everything in my will to make it the best of what it is. I like living life as a mystery. So it's exciting to me, especially leading into these next 2 weeks at Miss Earth USA. I do not know what the outcome is going to be. I know what I hope for it to be, but I'm at peace either way. And I can confidently say that I worked really hard for this. And there's not a thing that I would have changed about my journey.
Question four. What turns you off?
Loss. I've experienced a lot of loss and heartbreak in my life, and I know that it's something that's inevitable and it's going to happen. But as someone who has lost the people that I love in repetitive ways for my entire life,
Mm.
it kind of puts you on edge and like you're walking on eggshells. You're waiting for that heartbreak to happen any day now. And so it kind of creates this constantly triggered mindset. Like I constantly feel like I have to call and get in contact with the people that I love because it could be any day that I lose someone. So the
Yeah.
inevitable case of losing your loved ones.
Yeah. Question 5. What sound or noise do you love?
Hmm. Ooh, the rain machines whenever you sleep. I get really creeped out at night. I constantly think that someone's gonna break into my house and kidnap me, and so having, like, some sort of rain sound machine kind of takes away that anxiety, and I can just kinda feel like I'm a part of nature and sleep peacefully.
A rain sound machine.
Yes, it sounds like there is rain. You just put it on your nightstand, and it just sounds like there's rain outside your window all day long. It's amazing. So peaceful.
Oh, okay. I do love the sound of rain, but I never heard of
Yes,
a rain sound machine.
so
I've
great.
there's big things on YouTube like white noise and sound of
Mhm.
waves and
Yep.
sounds of rains and sound of storms, and I have
Yes.
listened to some of that because I'm a rubbish sleeper, not because I think someone's going to kidnap me, but that's interesting. Okay. Question 6. What sound or noise do you hate?
Students tapping their pencils on the desk while I'm in the middle of teaching. It is a big pet peeve. That's when they get the stormy night eyes. I'm like, mm, that's enough. That's enough. It drives me bonkers.
Is it just a nervous habit they have, or do they do it sometimes because they know it annoys you?
Oh, it's on purpose. I start the first week of school letting them know what my pet peeves are, which I think is now a mistake because they use it
Yeah,
against
yeah.
me.
Why did you do that, Sonny?
I
You
set
basically
myself
told
up for
them
failure.
all the buttons to push.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll take that out of my lesson next year.
Tell them that you love it, and then they'll
I
never do
love
it.
that.
You know what I love? The sound of people tapping the pencil on the desk incessantly. I
Mhm.
love that, and none of them will ever do
Be like, "Okay,
it.
not doing it."
Yeah. Question 7. If you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
Ooh, time travel. I there are so many people in the past that I would love to get to meet, and I also, kinda wanna see what's going on in the future, not necessarily what I will be doing, but what is this world going to look like? Because
Yeah.
I clearly am someone who loves kids and wants to protect this planet for them, so I'm curious to know, the state of our planet in the next 10, 25 years.
That might be a really scary answer, is
Yep,
the
I
only thing,
agree.
given how the
Yeah.
world's going at the moment.
Mhm.
Okay.
But it would help me figure
Uh,
out how I need to fix it quicker, so
that's true.
yeah.
Question 8. What job, other than your own, would you most like to attempt?
Ooh, well, I've always since I was a little girl, I've always wanted to be a rock star. Grew up listening to rock music. When I did, another pageant years ago, I sang on stage for the very first time, and I was like, "Okay, I am made for this. I could be a superstar." So I think being a rock star, like, Stevie Nicks or some sort of rock star, I think that'd be amazing to get to travel the world and sing for people. It's amazing.
What song did you perform?
I sing a Imagine Dragons song called Warriors,
Oh,
which
yeah.
kind of fits with my story, but it's from a video game that I used to play. So it's kind of a nerdy little take on the weird part of Sunny who likes to play video games.
I like to play video games too, especially at this time of year because I got nothing else to do and I just need to relax. So I completely understand that. Question 9. What job would you definitely not like to attempt?
A chef. Okay, I like to cook at home, but I get my feelings hurt really, really bad if people don't like my food, and I feel like you are always up for critique when you are cooking at a restaurant, so I do not want anyone to hurt my feelings because then I might get a little sassy about it. So
That's so funny because you're so tough and resilient in all these other
thank
ways,
you.
but not with your cooking. Like,
I'm not my
why?
food because you put so much time and effort into it. You're like, "You know how long I spent on this meal for you to say it's not good? Thank you. Waste of time."
Just give them a microwave dinner next time. Um,
Exactly.
Final question. And if I sneeze, I apologize because I feel like I'm about to sneeze. But final question. If heaven exists, what
Mm.
would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
That my grandma and grandpa are waiting at the gates for me. Like I said, I lost both of my grandparents. I actually have no more living grandparents left, but one, um, that would give me so much peace knowing that they did
Mm.
make it to heaven, but also two, that I get to be reunited with them and I can give them a big hug and tell them sorry. because I do feel like I could have done more. When my grandma passed away during COVID, I was the only person, I was considered the person who was in charge of her.
Right.
And I was one of the last people to see her, and it was really heartbreaking. And I wish that I would have been able to be in that room when they did pull the plug for her. And because of COVID, I wasn't able to. So just getting those last few seconds with them. But I would love to be reunited with my grandparents.
Well, Sunny, that is it. I think you
Awesome.
are an amazing person. You're doing
Thank
an
you.
amazing job, and I really hope that you do get to achieve your career goals because God knows that we need some reform in education
Mhm.
in the Western world.
Absolutely.
And on another note, best of luck at the pageant,
Thank you.
whichever way it turns out. When are you actually leaving for the pageant? I didn't ask.
I am leaving January 1st,
Okay.
and school's supposed to be back in session the 5th, so I'm taking an extra week off of work. But my sub work is all prepped, but I'm ready to go. My suitcases are next to me packed. I'm ready. I'm excited.
And very organized as well.
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
Well, best of luck, as I said. Thank you for coming on. I'll get you to stay on the line for just a second whilst I hang up with the audience. And thanks everyone for watching, and we will speak to you next time. Bye for now. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Sorority Access is now open. So if you'd like to join an amazing group of women and learn how to be the most powerful, confident, and impactful queen possible, head to thepageantsorority.com. I'll see you there and see you in the next video.